Greetings, everyone! Today our focus is going to be on understanding human genes. We're going to follow a soon-to-be mother as she visits her doctor and asks questions about her future child.
10 fingers, 10 toes, that's all that used to matter. Not now.
What if someone offered you the chance to have a genetically perfect baby? A lot of controversy. A designer child.
Genetics.
Don't you want the best for your child? Offer you How beautiful do you have? Children made to order.
I need to see my doctor right away.
As you will soon find out, the concept of human genes is very important, but widely misunderstood. But don't worry, I'm here to help. Let's get started with the basics. As you may already know, your DNA determines everything that happens in your body, and changes in DNA can lead to many different diseases and disorders. For example, by adding another nucleotide base pair, this causes a change in appearance. DNA is what makes you, you. If we zoom up on the DNA strand, we can see that DNA is formed by a group of links, called nucleotides. There are three components that make up a nucleotide: a sugar forming the ring, a phosphate group, and the four nucleotide bases: adenine, guanine, cytosine, and thymine. A specific sequence of these four bases makes up a gene. Genes carry the information that determines our traits. They tell us something about who you are and what you look like. Genes can vary in size from a few hundred DNA bases to over a million DNA bases. Because we have so much DNA, it needs to be tightly packed in order to fit into our cells. In fact, 5 feet of DNA exists in every single cell. When DNA is tightly coiled, it forms a structure called a chromosome. There are 23 distinct pairs of chromosomes in each of your cells, each one containing many genes. The complete set of all the genes on all the chromosomes in human is known as the human genome. It wasn't until relatively recently that we were able to sequence the entire human genome to identify some of the genes that are contained in a human. Scientists even determined where some of these genes are located. In 1990, a massive international research project called the Human Genome Project sequenced the entire human genome. Scientists from all over the world worked on this for 10 years, and finally in 2003, it was completed. They determined that humans have between 20 and 25,000 genes encoded in over 3 billion base pairs that make up the entire human genome. Have you ever wondered how exactly we know what genes are encoded in DNA? And how they vary from person to person? Scientists use something called DNA sequencing, which is the method of determining the exact sequence of nucleotide bases in DNA.
Today, DNA sequencing technology is quick and inexpensive compared to several years ago. We can now sequence a human genome within several hours, although it takes a little longer to analyze it. What's even more exciting is that San Diego is home to some of the leading companies in this field. One company, Illumina, is located close to us in Mira Mesa and is constantly building new machines and technology to make DNA sequencing even faster and cheaper. And other companies like 23andMe allow you to just spit into a tube and they can tell you all about your genes and ancestry in just a matter of weeks. With all this new and exciting technology, it's hard for people not to get a bit confused about what they see in the media and on TV. Let's get back to the expectant mom and see what questions she has for her doctor. Maybe we can help her out.
Good morning, Mrs. Davis. What can I do for you today?
Hi. Well, I was just watching some movies and things. I just watched some Gattaca.
We would want Vincent to have a brother, to play with.
Of course you would. Specified, hazel eyes, dark hair, and fair skin. I have taken the liberty of eradicating any potentially prejudicial conditions. Premature baldness, myopia, alcoholism and addictive susceptibility, propensity for violence, obesity.
And I was listening and hearing about all of the new technology that we have to sequence our genes and to tell what traits we have. So I wrote some things down that I want my future child to have. My first son, Alex, has blonde hair and freckles and blue eyes, so I don't really want my second son to look like that. I want him to have maybe dark hair and green eyes, probably...
Oh, okay, whoa. I'm so sorry to interrupt you, Mrs. Davis, but just because your first son, Alex, has blonde hair and blue eyes and freckles actually doesn't mean that your second child will also. I think maybe before we go any further, we should try to get a better understanding about our traits and their inherent variation.
Variation? I mean, don't I thought that, what do you mean variation? Don't we all, like, aren't we just born with the same traits as our parents?
Well, not exactly.
Like mentioned earlier, our genes carry the information that determines all of our traits, like our hair color, eye color, and skin color. Remember the central dogma of biology? Our genes consist of sequences of DNA that is transcribed into an RNA molecule. Basically, each of our genes are recipes for making a certain protein, and each protein molecule that is created in the cell is composed of a unique genetic code found in the original DNA molecule. It is this genetic code, composed of specific sequences of A's, T's, G's, and C's, that make up our genes. And it is our genes that not only make up our traits, but also the variation in this genetic code that cause all of us to have different traits.
Although there are many genes that are exactly the same in all people, there are also differences that makes each person unique. Each one of us has a genome that is different from everyone else's. The extent of this genetic variation is such that no two humans besides identical twins are genetically identical. So if someone ever tells you that you are a one of a kind, they really mean it. Between any two humans, the amount of genetic variation is about 0.1%. This means about one base pair out of 1,000 base pairs will be different between two individuals. This variation in our DNA is why we all have different hair color, eye color,
And the ability to roll your tongue or not.
Trait variation inherently comes from our genetic sources, or in other words, it comes from our own DNA. One thing that causes all of us to be different is mutations in our DNA, but we also get variation when we inherit traits from our parents. So even though Mrs. Davis already has a son with blonde hair and blue eyes, her newborn child will not be exactly the same because that child will inherit Mr. and Mrs. Davis's traits in a way that is different than their current son.
While a majority of variation comes from our DNA, you should know that these variations come from our environment as well. Things such as your climate, nutrition, and how you were raised can all affect how our traits vary. Scientists can actually study identical twins who have identical genes to see how their environment impacts how they differ from each other in certain traits, such as their height and weight.
Okay, so I think that I understand this a little bit better, but what about mutations? Because, I mean, I definitely don't want my kid to have any genetic diseases from any mutations or any other problems from that.
Yes, well, that's completely understandable, Mrs. Davis, and there are a couple things we can actually do in regard to your concern with mutations.
Well, in the movies, it said, like, they can look for the mutation, find it, and then pretty much just fix it. So, is that what you can do?
Unfortunately, no. While new technology is coming out that may allow us to fix mutations, it's not currently available to the public right now. But what we can do for you is run a couple tests while you're pregnant, and that allows us to screen your embryo for harmful mutations. However, this only allows us to assess the risk that your baby has to a genetic disease, but it actually doesn't let us even diagnose or treat any of these diseases.
What? How can you not do anything? I mean, it seems it's so easy. Like in all of the movies, they find the mutation and then they go in and they fix it. I mean, I feel like I could do that myself if I had all of your resources.
Well, Mrs. Davis, it's actually a little bit more complicated than that.
It definitely is more complicated than the movies make it seem, but let me break it down for you. As we mentioned earlier, our genes serve as recipes for proteins that tell our cells what to do and when to do it. To function correctly, each cell depends on thousands of proteins to do their jobs in the right places at the right times. Sometimes, gene mutations prevent one or more of these proteins from working properly. By changing a gene's instructions for making a protein, a mutation can cause the protein to malfunction or to be missing entirely. When a mutation alters a protein that plays a critical role in the body, it can disrupt normal development or cause a medical condition. It is important to know that it's not the gene itself that causes a genetic disorder, but rather the mutation in the genetic code. Some genetic disorders that you may have heard of before are cystic fibrosis, sickle cell anemia, and color blindness. All of these disorders are caused by the mutation of a single gene, but this is a lot more complex than it sounds. For example, the most common cause of a disease might be several specific nucleotide bases within a specific gene are deleted, but there may also be over 1,000 other mutations that can cause the disease. What makes genetic diseases even more complex is that most of them are caused by multiple mutations in multiple genes, making it almost impossible to know exactly what mutations cause certain diseases. As you can imagine, this makes it very hard to fix mutations like Ms. Davis asked for.
Okay, so I understand I can't do anything today, but you said that, we're coming up with this new technology, so in a couple of years when I have another child, do you think that you can help me then? To enhance the beauty and intelligence and things. My son Alex, he ate dirt yesterday, so I don't think that some enhancement, would hurt.
Mrs. Davis, most likely no, and that's just because we're all so complex. There's not one gene that controls beauty or intelligence, and in fact, most of our traits are actually controlled by more than one gene. For example, your exact height was determined by not one gene, but nearly 700 different genes.
Wow. Okay, it seems like there's a lot of false information and misconceptions from the media. I guess I understand now. So just because we're so complex, every trait and human disease is made up of so many things that it's just hard to enhance a certain thing because it's just not as simple as I thought from the movies before.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, but there's still nothing you can do about my son eating dirt.
Unfortunately, I think our time is up, Mrs. Davis. I have a lot of other patients to see today. Good luck with Alex, and sure he'll turn out great. Have a good one.
Thank you, doctor.